Yamamoto just told an arena full of people that he thinks you have the best shot that he's ever seen. Do you have any
response to that?
So what does Vince Dunn think about what Kyler Yamamoto thinks about his shot? What did Philipp Grubauer think about goalie interference call? And what was said in the Seattle Kraken locker room between the Minnesota Wild game and the Boston Bruins game to get the Seattle Kraken back into the win column? All that and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are the Seattle Kraken.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team every single day. My name is Erica L. Ayala. I am your host of Locked On Kraken, been your host of Locked On Kraken since before the expansion draft. And we've seen a lot, including the Beijing Olympics, men's Final Four, Winter Classic, and here's hoping we have more moments to share, including what was that look Vince Dunn gave us eyes. For those listening on audio, you can check out the video on Locked On Kraken on social media, and of course our YouTube shorts at Locked On Kraken. But Vince Dunn, a little bit taken aback by the compliment that Kyler Yamamoto gave after the Seattle Kraken get a win against the Boston Bruins in overtime shootout fashion. And it was a good win. There were some great moments post-game that we're going to share here on the episode. But let me take you back to the video and the audio clip that I showed you at the open. This is Vince Dunn hearing that Kyler Yamamoto says that he has one of the best shots he's ever seen, complimenting Vince Dunn, who was key to a Seattle Kraken win. Let's hear from Vince, and then I'll break down the clip.
Yamamoto just told an arena full of people that he thinks you have the best shot that he's ever seen. Do you have any
response to that?
That's a pretty big compliment.
Yeah, that's nice. I'm sure you saw how good his was there in the shootout too. I think all of my goals, I don't think, maybe I can remember one where the goalie was actually watching the puck the whole time. So a lot of credit to the guys who get in front of the goalies and do the dirty work for me. It's just my job to get it past a couple layers up top and hopefully get it through the net. So a lot of props to them. They've done a great job for me all year. Yeah, I think even before the Vancouver game, we split up and had a lot of private conversations with defense, forwards, special teams, and just understanding how crucial these next few weeks are. The Minnesota game got away from us from a whole lot of different aspects, but like I said, we got to find a way to forget about those games, and these two big wins against Vancouver and Boston, like you said, that's good for the confidence, and we just need to keep rolling from here.
So Vince Dunn talking about how these are good wins for the confidence for the Seattle Kraken. And yes, confidence has been something I sometimes hesitate to use the word confidence, because I feel like if you were getting paid millions of dollars, it would be nice to kind of know that you don't necessarily need external factors for confidence, but maybe that's just me. But I think more so for me, the gripe with the Seattle Kraken has been the consistency. And so I guess it's one of those existential questions. What comes first? Confidence, consistency, confidence. I think you need both. But what you also heard from Vince Dunn in the post game is that he talked about the Seattle Kraken having moments where between the Minnesota Wild game and this Boston Bruins game where they get the win, that the Seattle Kraken divided into forwards, defenders, and then also divided into special teams units. And I'm imagining the goaltenders also had some conversation. We'll hear from Philipp Grubauer in a little bit. And it was just about getting on the same page, making sure that the team knew what they needed to execute in their respective areas. And I love this for the Seattle Kraken. I think that, again, the inconsistencies have been the real irksome part of this season 3 for the Seattle Kraken. And yes, I talk about it every episode. I don't want anyone in the comments talking about, oh, Erica, well, they've been injured. Andre Burakovsky has come back from injury 3 different times. Yes, I know. I watch most every Seattle Kraken hockey game just like you do. So I know that. And injuries are part of the game. You don't want to deal with as many injuries as the Seattle Kraken have dealt with, but that's hockey, baby. That being said, there were times where we were healthy, especially coming straight into the season where we did not play to our potential. And the consistency has been tough. So between Tomas Tatar a couple of weeks ago talking about a closed door meeting between Jordan Eberle and Jared McCann talking about how they're talking to some of the younger players, those two in particular talking about Matty Beniers and saying, hey, let's get the confidence back. And between Vince Dunn confirming that this team is taking time out, whether it's during practice or whatever the case is, to spend time together to, in my mind, they're drawing stuff up on the whiteboard, maybe not literally, but they're having a conversation. And those things are critically important when it comes to a situation like the Seattle Kraken are in right now, where they're taking every game as if it's playoff level game, because that's how they have to play. That's how locked in, no pun intended, that's how locked in they have to be if they want to advance. And I think that this wasn't a perfect game. We have not seen a perfect game. We might not ever see a perfect game from the Seattle Kraken, but there were definitely things that we can build upon. And I do think that as much as I certainly found the Minnesota Wild game disappointing, and we heard that Dave Haxtell felt that the team should be upset with themselves, himself included, I do think that they had a little bit more in the gas tank when it came to overcoming adversity. And that's what I liked about this game. But Vince Dunn, the reason, or at least in part, that we heard from Kyler Yamamoto in Climate Pledge Arena, the amazing Piper Shaw interviewing him after the game, saying that he feels Vince Dunn has one of the best shots that he's ever seen. Well, it's because Vince Dunn was one of the Seattle Kraken players that had a game-tying goal. We saw that David Pastrnak got the first goal going. We don't, generally speaking, on this show, like to see our opponent score first, but it happens. But then Eberle gets the first goal of the second period to tie the game. That was a power play goal. It was, listen, they don't ask how, they ask how many. But basically, the puck was misplayed, and you take the opportunity as you get it. Then, though, David Pastrnak in that same frame, the second stanza, as I like to say, he scores at the 17:08 mark. So Eberle scored in the first 5 minutes. Pasta scores in the last 5 minutes of that frame. So up 2-1 going into the third period. And that's where Vince Dunn comes in. He comes in, big time shot, assisted by Burakovsky and Gord, and ties up the game at 2 a shot. Oliver Bjorkstrand gets a fantastic goal. And I tweeted this last night as I was watching the game. It was a great shot in by Borgen. But if you look at how that sequence started, the Seattle Kraken, when it came to exits and entries, and we're going to go over the post-game analysis or the instant analysis that Allison Lucan puts up. My eye test was telling me that the Seattle Kraken were having trouble entering the zone. They were getting really bogged down in the neutral zone, and the pace of this game was wild. I mean, it was beautiful to watch, but at times it felt as though the Seattle Kraken, just at little glimmers of moments in the game, that it was really Boston pushing the pedal to the metal and Seattle having to react to that. And I do think from my eye test that getting stuck not being able to enter the zone the way we wanted, not really getting great on the forechecking. So I think we were fast. I think eventually we had some fun, but I don't think the forechecking is exactly what I wanted to see. Hey, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, as the song goes. Ma, where's the meatloaf? Some of you will get that. Some of you will not. That's fine. Look it up. Anyway, that's actually 2 different references. Anyway, the point being that Oliver Bjorkstrand, on his goal to put the Seattle Kraken up, their first lead of the game at the 14:30 mark. All right, the 14:30 mark, we have the lead. First lead of the game. He worked diligently right there at the blue line as we enter our offensive zone to retrieve the puck. He's taking the puck away from Boston. Oliver Bjorkstrand, I don't think anyone would classify him as kind of like a husky, beefy, or particularly tall hockey player. And I would say that he uses the weight, the height, the size that he has, and he uses it well because he does not get taken off the puck very well. And he's very good at being able to not only maneuver through defenses, but also be able to retrieve the puck for the Seattle Kraken. And that's exactly what he does to set up that, at the time, game-tying goal. Unfortunately, it wouldn't last. With less than 3 minutes left in the third period, the one and only Chris Coyle on a power play is able to get the Boston Bruins level. And Yamamoto, again, was talking to Piper Shaw because he comes through first shot of the shootout. That's all we needed, baby. And then Philipp Grubauer shuts the door, and the Seattle Kraken get the win. So that's a quick summary. Coming up on Locked On Kraken, we're going to hear from Philipp Grubauer, and I want to go over some of his stats. I want to take a look at what's happening on Natural Stat Trick and talking about putting in the work. I kind of already alluded to that, but I want to talk about it within the context of what we continually need to do in order to be in a position to win out in this playoff race. That is coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Sleeper. It is well beyond the halfway point of the NHL season, Seattle hockey fans. And again, the Seattle Kraken, we're trying to figure out, is this going to be a great season for us? Is it going to be a sore point? Are we going to be looking at the moments where we could have done more? We don't know. But what we do know is that regardless of where the Seattle Kraken are in the current standings, I want to let you know that you could win big playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. You can also use Sleeper to play daily fantasy in NFL, NBA, MLB, college football, and so many other things that you can do. There's a team group chat function available on Sleeper. And my favorite part is that entries can be made in less than a minute. And all you have to do, Seattle hockey fans, is to pick whether studs like Bjorkstrand, Dunn, or even Yamamoto will record more or less than their Sleeper projections on things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and so much more. To win 100x your bet on Sleeper, you'll need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me right, Seattle hockey fans. You can 100 times your money by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. And thanks as always, Locked On listeners, for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. OGers, you know, I felt pretty passionate about our episode yesterday. Did we overuse Joey Daccord? And I think I've been kind of saying the answer is yes for weeks now. I'm very curious to see We've got Vancouver coming up. We've got Pittsburgh coming up. I'm very curious to see how we balance Grubauer versus Joey Daccord, because I've also been telling you for weeks, for months since last season, that if we can get Philipp Grubauer, who we had in the playoffs, if we can get him in the postseason again this year, I like our chances. I like our chances. And then Joey Daccord is his backup. I like our chances. I like our chances. The problem is we've got a lot more work to do, at least than we did last year around this time, to even make the playoffs. So do we need Philipp Grubauer now? Well, that's why we got to talk about putting in the work. And it was also something that Philipp Grubauer, who we're going to hear from in a little bit, and I it's not in this clip that I prepared for you, but he was asked about not playing for a while and how he prepares. He did get asked that pretty, at this point, it seems a little bit standard question. Yeah, do you like, to get shots early? Do you like to see a lot of shots early? I feel like almost every goalie tells you the same thing. Yeah, they want to get shots. Now, they don't want to be in a position where they're giving up goals, but yeah, you want to get some shots early so that you get into the cadence of the game. So he was asked about that, but I believe it was Darren. Sounds like it would be a Darren Brown question, where he was asked about how do you prepare? How do you stay sharp? How do you make sure that you're ready? And he said Stevie was that was the way. And no, he's not talking about, a sugar-free sweetener. He's talking about Steve Briere. And so putting in the work, the Seattle Kraken, this is why I love the Seattle Kraken having practice, Andre Burakovsky. When you have practice, and Dave has been talking about this since the team got back home, when you have practice, you can put in the work like that with Steve Briere. You can put in the work to have an all defense meeting, to have an all offense meeting or all forwards meeting, to have a goalie meeting, to have special teams meetings. You can put in that work. I talked about that with the clip I shared from Vince Dunn and how he let us know. Yeah, we had a conversation. We wanted to nail down what we need to do and how we can be better coming off of some of the most recent losses. That's what the work is. And they have to put in that work to get the mentality right. I talked a lot about mentality on yesterday's episode. Because, I'm still getting signs. I used to do leadership development, so I don't know if any of this is going to make sense or how to kind of translate it necessarily for hockey. At least I don't necessarily know that I have the right wording right now, but it's like that intuition that Dave Haxtell talked about the other night, right? And how he had intuition. And we played clips also from him talking at Morning Skate yesterday that, yeah, they're looking at data, but there is a little bit of intuition. My intuition right now is that the team needed to settle Andre Burakovsky down. And they did just that. Now, he didn't score a goal, but he got an assist on Dunn's goal. He had an opportunity. Was it in overtime? It was in overtime where he got fed a pretty nice pass and he just couldn't complete the breakaway, but he's getting opportunities. And that's light years away from that frustration that I felt for Berkey was bubbling over. Now, I still think that, there's a little bit more work that needs to be done there. And Andre Burakovsky is the closest to a player playing an individual game on a team that needs to play a team game to be successful. That I'm not saying that is who he is, but if there's going to be anyone, this is my take. If there's going to be anyone on the Seattle Kraken team that we want, that we hope, and that will accept kind of doing his own thing, I think it's Berkey. Is that right? Is that wrong? As long as it's effective for right now, I'm ready to rock with it. And I do see concessions. I see changes being made to make sure that Burakovsky is in the best position possible, because I do believe once we get his scoring back to what we know it can be, he is a critical part of this team. And now the team has to put in the work to make it so that the ice opens up for Burakovsky. And if we're not going to do that, then we have to have some conversations. Speaking of conversations, I told you I want to get into the post-game analysis that Allison Lucan gave us, but also we're going to go to one of her articles. She has a Q&A series that she's been doing, and we know trade deadline is just around the river bend, as Pocahontas once sang, at least according to Disney. It's just around the corner. And there are a lot of things to consider for the Seattle Kraken. This is an overtime win, so we do get the 2 points. But as we'll talk about in the next segment, we didn't gain much, not only because of this win, but in my opinion, more so because of the regulation loss to the Minnesota Wild. So we've still got plenty to talk about, not to mention that the Kansas City Mavericks are coming to Tulsa. So I will have some good stuff for you there. Let's get into all that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken, once again, brought to you by our friends at Camino Consulting. Now, I've told you about Camino Consulting. I've told you that you can take advantage of the Locked On promo code, discount code that we have running until the end of this month, aka just until Thursday. And that is a 25% discount running to the end of the month on the live seminars. On some of the consulting. But what about live seminars? In both sport and business, the challenge in differentiating candidates and recruits is an endless battle. And so you always need different tools to have so that you can get the best from your recruits. Again, whether we're talking sports or whether we're talking business. So that's when you want to contact Camino Consulting, because their team and management seminars will give you a peek behind the curtain and help your next recruiting class or hiring group become one of the most effective you've ever seen, because you've already identified the talent. That's why putting in the work, that's what we're talking about with the Seattle Kraken. We've already identified the talent. Burakovsky, Dunn, McCann, Decord, Philipp Grubauer. We've already done that. Now what we have to do is get them in a place where they can thrive. And so that's exactly what you can find at Camino Consulting. You also can find referrals. If you want to make someone else's team better, tell them about Camino Consulting and you'll get a little kickback. Every group works together better at the end of 1 year than 1 week. So contact Camino Consulting at caminoconsulting.ca and get on the fast track to understanding. All right, Seattle hockey fans, we've got a lot to get into. And we already heard from Dunn. Now, I mentioned Philipp Grubauer, and I want to go back to that. So he's talking about Stevie, but here's what he had to say also about his little run-in with Morgan Geekie. First of all, he didn't even know it was Geekie. But here's what he had to say about the overturned goal call, which would have, put at the time, I believe it would have been the game-tying goal after Bjorkstrand. Somewhere along that line. Anyway, here is Philipp Grubauer.
I don't think the first period was our period. We sat back a little bit. We were a step quicker. Second period was amazing. Third period we played to our identity, and there was some important shifts. Was that Geeks?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really? Yeah. Never know these days what the call is going to be, if it's goal interference or not. I didn't even see or notice that he touched the puck a second time. I think that was a great call by Toronto. Could have been the turning point of the game here. Yeah, obviously those are huge moments. If I remember correctly, it was right in the slot. Schultz went down, blocked it, and I think those are really important parts of the game. We're fighting for every point here, and that's kind of playoff hockey, and that's what we need going forward. We gave up a goal against Minnesota where we didn't block it, went through a couple guys, and at that point it didn't matter because it was 5-1 or whatever it was. But if it's a tight game, we need those blocks for sure.
So there you hear again, Philipp Grubauer talking about a lot of things, but he also talked about blocked shots. Now, the Boston Bruins actually won this battle, 21 block shots to our 16. And I think honestly, a little bit of that had to do with us having some difficulty entering the zone. And so kind of trying to either shoot from way out in the perimeter or not being able to effectively just kind of dump the puck down. But also, he's talking about playoff hockey. If you are an everydayer or OGer, you know, we talked a lot about, and I was actually in Seattle for this, the first practice of our playoff run. And we heard from Matty Beniers in particular, but the entire team said we're bought in. And a part of the buy-in, as you just heard from Philipp Grubauer, and as we heard from Matty B last season, is you put your body on the line. And he felt, Philipp Grubauer, that is, aka Gruby, aka the German gentleman, you know, etc., etc. What we heard from him is that that was lacking at times in the game against the Minnesota Wild. And I couldn't agree more. The effort, the execution, the consistency, and the commitment to winning the game by any means necessary. We need that sandpaper. Can you hear this? I want to make sure you're hearing this. We need the sandpaper. We need the grit, the moxie, whatever you want to call it, but that has to elevate. You know, I'm going to take you to the post-game instant analysis, but I don't see that as a metric. You know, I might have to come up with something because that's a metric that I would love to see. What I do love to see is that per Allison Lucan's amazing post-game instant analysis, this was a quality start for Philipp Grubauer. He was 1.6 above expected goals saved, 29 saves out of 32 shots faced. Now, here's what I want to focus on 5-on-5 defense. Entry denials, 38% for the Seattle Kraken, 49% for the Bruins. That is something that, again, my eye test was like, they're doing a better job. They are really great at denying entries. Wow, language is sometimes hard. The Boston Bruins were effective at denying the Seattle Kraken entrance into their own offensive zone. And we see that 11 percentage point differential there. The zone exits 10 percentage point differential, 78% efficiency on the Seattle side, 88% efficiency on the Bruins side. Puck battles were literally 50-50. I'll take that. High danger chances. This goes back to, I think, for me, I test why the Bruins had more block shots is because the Seattle Kraken were not taking high danger shots. We weren't. And I'm not going to pull up the heat map today, but you know I love a heat map. And that's exactly, I looked at natural stat trick. There is no heat. There was a map and there were some blobs, but it was not heat because there was no concentration. So, the high danger shots 11-4 in favor of the Boston Bruins. Puck in the offensive zone pretty close, 38% to 41%, but still favoring the Boston Bruins. Shot quality. I mean, again, I told you my eye test was telling me shot quality not good. Allison Lucan coming up with the Big Apple here. I get it, Big Apple, because I'm from New York. The Big Apple, aka the assist here with shot quality. Quality shots for the Seattle Kraken, 2.8. For the Boston Bruins, 4.6. So again, they had that. But if I had to give you my instant post-game analysis, and it's not instant because, you know, it's the next day. But if I had to give you my moxie sandpaper analysis, the only way that we win this game, given what I just told you, is if we win the sandpaper battle. We win the sandpaper battle. We get a quality start from Philipp Grubauer. He comes up massive in overtime. Kyler Yamamoto going first in the shootout. I got this. Washington native is like, I'm going to put you on my back. Let's go. So we need that energy, right? The confidence, that Vince Dunn was talking about, but you got to bottle it up. And I want that confidence to be like, yeah, we can win this game when statistically speaking, in categories that are significant, maybe we weren't the better team, but we stuck with it. I want that. And I want us also to level up our performance because we can put up better numbers. We can. And a part of that, you have to give credit to Boston. They were fast. They were forechecking. They were absolutely forechecking, and they were menacing, standing us up on our blue line as we were trying to enter the offensive zone. So you got to give stick taps to Boston, but yes, beat the chest, Seattle hockey fans, because our guys came through, and in no small part to them playing at home and hearing that crowd, hearing, Lithium, let's go. And they had to represent on Black History Month. Now, it's not going to be Black History Month every day, at least not officially. It's always Black History Month in Black Rosie Media headquarters, but it's not always going to be Black History Month. It's not always going to be a game at Climate Pledge Arena. You're not always going to get the benefit of the doubt from Toronto. Like Philipp Grubauer said, who knows what goalie interference is? It's kind of like what a kicking motion is. Nobody knows. You think maybe they'd ask MLS or something like that. Anyway, I digress. That's not, you got to find it. And that's where the preparation, I love that the guys are having practice. I love that the guys are having meetings. I love that Dave is communicating and making changes, making the changes necessary. I love all of this because we are in a fight. We are in a fight. We're not out of the woods. We are not in the clear. We had an episode where he talked about and made a Taylor Swift reference. We are not there yet. As of right now, even with that win, 61 points. Who also has 61 points? Calgary. And they're ahead of us right now in the wild card. Also in the Pacific Division. But in the wild card, they're ahead of us. You know who else is ahead of us? Minnesota. We gave them 2 points. If we win that game, in regulation, they would have 60. Well, I'd have to look at their record, but they have 62 points right now. You take away 2 of those points, you give them to us. Guess who we're ahead of? The Minnesota Wild. And then we'd be right. We'd also have leapfrogged St. Louis, which would put us 3 points behind Nashville. So this game against the Bruins, as I said earlier in the show, it didn't do us any harm, but it didn't do us as much good because of the loss to Minnesota in regulation. Now, if we give up overtime points to a team that's not even in our conference, hey, whatever, do your thing. But we can't lose points. And we can't give away points to Pacific Division opponents. So now it's time to look at the schedule. We have to look at the schedule because we really, we gotta win some of these games. So we're end of February right now. We just played Boston. We got Pittsburgh coming up and then Edmonton at the end of the week. Q&A with Ricky Olczyk. Yes, there's 3 of them with this Seattle Kraken. Oh, Ricky. So this is great. I loved the insight about from Ricky Olczyk about what the process is when it comes to a trade, what the philosophy is when it comes to a trade. Allison asks, can you walk us through in a broad sense exactly how does a trade go down? How does that all happen? Also talked about how things are communicated with the players. And we just played Flower, right? The other night, Marc-Andre Fleury, and, rumor has it that at least a time or two, he got booted without necessarily the right communication. So I like this article. We can talk about it a little bit tomorrow. The Seattle Kraken will not play again until they take on Pittsburgh on Thursday. So we have time to get into this. But if you haven't read it already, make sure you do your homework because tomorrow I want to really dig a little bit deeper into not just the trade deadline. Are we buyers? Are we sellers? But the philosophy coming from the Seattle Kraken. That's coming up on the next episode of Locked On Kraken. But until then, Be kind to yourselves. Be kind to one another. Tomorrow, I'm going to get you ready. It is a game day for our ECHL team. They'll be here in Tulsa. We'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll get into this article, getting ready for the trade deadline. I mentioned one of our Locked On Kraken insiders really looking at these next handful of games right before the trade deadline, which is Pittsburgh. Then we have Edmonton. Then we have Calgary and Winnipeg. And then on the 8th, we play Winnipeg as well. So these are the next handful of games. We got to get as many points as possible. And the only team that we play in that stretch that is not in the Pacific Division is Pittsburgh. So if you want to futz around, make sure it's happening against Pittsburgh. Everything else, we need points. Everything else, we need points. We cannot afford to lose in regulation, but especially not to Calgary. We'll get into that. Hold fast, stay true, and loud and proud we say, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.